Welcome, everyone, to China True Story. I'm Leo, and I'll be guiding you through today's story.
And I'm Sophie.
Imagine this with me for a moment. A husband surprises his wife with a romantic ferry trip just to see the sea.
Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Like something out of a movie.
Totally idyllic. A real gesture of affection, you'd think. But what if I told you that this seemingly sweet voyage was actually the meticulously planned setting for a murder?
Yeah, it's just such a jarring contrast, isn't it? That innocent idea twisted into something so dark and calculated.
It really makes you stop and question everything.
Absolutely.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into what's become known as the Dalian Ferry murder for insurance.
A really chilling case.
Our mission here is to unpack this truly shocking story. I mean, driven by extreme financial desperation, layers and layers of deception, and this calculated crime that, well, despite how carefully he planned it, it all unraveled.
And often because of these tiny little details, right?
Yeah.
Things you wouldn't expect.
Exactly. Surprising details and just relentless police work. To understand how, we've pulled together quite a bit. Police investigation reports, the autopsy findings, super crucial witness testimonies, financial records, even surveillance footage.
A real mosaic of evidence.
Yeah, and each piece sort of clicks together to tell this grim story.
And in a case like this, like you said, every single detail really does become critical. It's often those small inconsistencies that investigators latch onto.
A thread they start pulling.
Exactly. That's how the whole truth starts to come out.
Okay, so let's start with the deception itself, specifically that fatal voyage. It was May 5, 2021.
Right.
Li Gang, the husband, is with his wife, Li Yuan, on this ferry from Dalian to Yantai. Now, what was it about his actions right after she fell in the sea that immediately threw up huge red flags for the police?
Well, his reaction, or maybe lack of it, was incredibly telling. Almost immediately after she went overboard, Li Gang was just unnaturally calm.
Calm.
Yeah, eerily so. And his main focus, almost like an insistent demand, wasn't, where is she? Can we save her? It was about getting a death certificate.
Wow. Okay. Straight to the paperwork.
Right. That kind of composure, that immediate focus on the official documentation before the shock is even set in, I mean, that instantly makes any experienced investigator suspicious. It's just not a normal response.
No, that sounds like a very strange priority indeed. So who was this guy? Li Gang, the supposed mastermind. Because on the surface, his background is actually quite surprising.
It really is.
Born 1977, humble family in Liaoning, but he actually graduated from a prestigious 211 university in Shanghai.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, top-tier university. He even brought his parents to live with him there. It sounds like, he made
Well, like a success story, right? Which makes the next part even wilder.
Exactly, because beneath that surface, Li Gang had this significant hidden criminal past.
Okay.
He'd been incarcerated, not just once, but twice.
Twice. What for? Between 2003 and 2004, multiple burglaries led to jail time. Then, later, 2016, another conviction. This time for credit card fraud.
So this wasn't just a youthful mistake. This sounds like a pattern.
A definite pattern. A history of, breaking the law, finding illicit ways to get by.
And besides the criminal record, it turns out he was in just desperate financial trouble. Absolute ruin.
Yeah, that's the key driver here, isn't it?
Seems like it. He owned a small restaurant, but apparently it was failing badly. Consistently owed money staff, salaries, suppliers. He'd maxed out all his credit cards. And get this.
Uh-oh.
He'd even drained over 100,000 Chinese yuan from Li Yuan's own bank account.
Wow, from his wife's account.
Yeah, and the preliminary estimate of his external debt, over 800,000 Chinese yuan.
That's a huge amount, over 100,000 US dollars roughly.
With apparently no way to repay it.
So you see the picture forming. This isn't just struggling financially, this is drowning in debt. The kind of pressure that can make someone, consider extreme options.
Desperate measures. It really shows how that kind of pressure can just warp everything.
Absolutely. Empathy goes out the window when self-preservation kicks in that hard.
Okay, so that brings us to the victim, Li Yuan. She seems like such an unlikely target in some ways.
Completely different background.
Yeah, very simple. From a rural area, barely finished elementary school, apparently illiterate.
Right. And she'd had a tough time before, too. 2 failed marriages, 2 kids, a son and a daughter.
And her personality. People described her as grizzy.
Right.
Which means kind of carefree, straightforward.
And, crucially, perhaps easily deceived. Trusting.
Which, it seems, Li Gang specifically targeted.
That's what makes it so predatory. You look at the marriage itself, it was just baffling to everyone who knew them.
How so?
Well, think about it. Li Gang, 44 years old, graduate of this top university, no previous marriages, suddenly marries Li Yuhan. She's 45, twice married, 2 kids, illiterate. They got married October 23, 2020.
Okay, yeah, that contrast is stark.
Her colleagues at the restaurant where she worked, even the person who introduced them, Zhu Mu, they were just shocked. Couldn't make sense of it.
That kind of mismatch immediately screams questions, right? Like, what's the real motive here?
Exactly. From an investigator's point of view, that's a huge red flag right away.
It definitely sounds like, well, not a love match. Maybe the marriage of convenience or, like you said, something worse. And then the plot starts taking shape.
The insurance plot.
Right. Soon after they got married, Li Gang buys not one, but 3 personal accidental insurance policies for Li Yuhuan.
3 of them. And the total payout.
You ready for this? 12.3 million Chinese yuan.
Whoa. That's, what, close to $2 million US?
A life-changing amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for someone 800,000 yuan in debt.
And the conditions on these policies were incredibly specific, weren't they?
Extremely strict. The payout only happened if she died accidentally while traveling on specific types of public transport.
Right.
Like a bus, plane, high-speed rail,
Or a ferry.
a ferry. And he apparently admitted later he chose the ferry because he thought other modes were unlikely to have accidents.
That just screams premeditation, doesn't it? Calculating the odds, finding the loophole. Chillingly logical in a twisted way.
And of course, the sole beneficiary of all 12.3 million yuan.
Let me guess. Li Gang himself.
Li Gang himself.
Of course.
So motive established, plan in place. Let's talk about the execution, this desperate act.
The trip itself.
Yeah, the pre-trip deception first. Li Gang decides they need to travel from Shanghai to his hometown in Liaoning. The reason? Supposedly to process Li Yuan's residency permit.
Okay, a plausible reason to travel.
Right. But after that, instead of heading straight back to Shanghai, he suggests this romantic detour, a ferry trip from Dalian to Yantai.
The ferry trip.
And Li Yuan, being trusting, maybe a bit naive, like people said, she actually saw it as a romantic gesture.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Thinking it's a treat when it's actually the setup.
And the surveillance footage from the ferry, it backed this up completely, shows her visibly excited, taking photos, enjoying herself, detached, refusing to interact much, didn't want to be in pictures with her, just off.
Like watching 2 totally different experiences unfold at the same time. Grim.
Really grim. And then there's the location he chose on the ferry, Deck 7, near the lifeboats.
What was significant about that spot?
Several things. No railings there. It was typically locked off, forbidden to tourists, and
Crucially.
a surveillance blind spot.
Exactly. Despite the ship having over 200 cameras, this specific area wasn't covered.
He planned that. He must have scouted it.
He did. Surveillance actually caught him visiting that exact spot earlier alone, wearing a mask and sunglasses.
Mask and sunglasses indoors, trying to hide his identity.
Clearly. He lingered there for over 20 minutes. And the footage apparently shows him looking agitated, like he was struggling internally.
Wrestling with the decision, maybe? Or just steeling himself? Hard to say. But it shows he was there, checking it out, before he made his final move. Confirms the premeditation.
Chilling.
So he knew the spot. Then the final step. Somehow he lures Li Yuan to this area. It wasn't easy to get to. Apparently you had to crawl or crouch. There was even a no entry sign.
But he got her there.
She got her there. We don't know exactly what he said. Then they both disappear from the camera's view into that blind spot.
And then
1 minute later, just 1 minute, a distant camera catches Li Yuan falling from the ship.
1 minute. That's horrifyingly quick. Everything happened in that blind spot.
The debt, the insurance, the scouting, the luring, it all culminated in that single minute.
Leaving very little doubt about what actually occurred there.
Right. So now the unraveling begins. The police investigation. We already mentioned his weirdly calm behavior and the focus on the death certificate.
Big initial red flags.
Then the forensic video analysis. Frame by frame, they looked at the footage. It showed Li Gang and Li Yuan clearly not acting like a couple, just awkward, detached.
And the fall itself.
They described it as a tumbling motion, not consistent with an accidental slip or a jump. It suggested external force, someone pushing her.
Physics doesn't lie. The way a body moves tells a story.
Absolutely. And then the family dynamics added another layer of suspicion.
Right. Her father and brother showing up.
Yeah, they arrived from their hometown, devastated, obviously.
Right.
But they tell the police they had no idea she was even married. They'd never met Li Gang.
Wow. So much for his claims of a normal marriage that completely undermines his story.
Totally. But the real nail in the coffin, the most critical piece, came from the autopsy.
What did it find?
Okay, so cause of death, drowning, that was expected. But she had injuries to her eye and mouth that happened before she hit the water. Before. While she was still on the ship.
Yes. Injuries indicating she'd been, and this is the report's wording, beaten, smothered, grabbed, and pushed while still alive.
Oh my God.
And crucially, remember the surveillance. It showed no such injuries on her before they went into that blind spot.
So the injuries had to have happened in that 1 minute in the blind spot when only he was with her.
Exactly. Irrefutable physical evidence of a homicide, placing him as the perpetrator.
His whole story just crumbles at that point. His claims of a good relationship, investigators called them illogical, made up.
Because they were directly contradicted by the evidence. The lies couldn't hold up.
And then the motive, the insurance money, started coming out in bits and pieces. It's actually quite strange how it emerged.
How so?
First, the Yuhuan's son tells police that Li Gang had promised him part of the insurance payout. But he said Li Gang told him it was only tens of thousands total, and he'd get over half.
Okay, a relatively small amount mentioned there.
Then Li Yuan's brother comes forward. He says Li Gang promised him 600,000 yuan from what Li Gang claimed was a 3 million policy.
So different amounts, different total policy values being thrown around by Li Gang, but consistently mentioning insurance payouts to family.
Exactly. These conflicting stories about the money were suspicious enough that police dug deeper, and that's when they found the actual total.
The 12.3 million.
The full 12.3 million yuan.
He was trying to buy their silence or cooperation with fractions of the real amount. Despicable.
Truly. And the investigation back in Shanghai just kept piling on the evidence.
What did they find there?
Restaurant staff, neighbors, they all confirmed the marriage seemed off. They never acted like a couple, always walked separately, even in elevators. Just cold.
Corroborating the surveillance footage observations.
Yep. Then they found out about Li Gang's mistress, a 19-year-old university student.
19. While married to Li Yuan.
Yes. And apparently, the student was actually paying for their dates. And Li Gang had told her that Li Yuan was just his nanny.
His nanny. The lies just keep coming. How did the student react?
She had a complete emotional breakdown when the police told her the truth. She had no idea. Just another layer of his deception. And maybe the most disturbing detail about his character.
There's more.
Soon after arriving at the hotel in Dalian, like right after his wife died, he tried to solicit prostitution online.
You're kidding. Immediately after.
Immediately after. It actually led to the arrest of the sex worker he contacted.
That shows such a profound lack of remorse. Just complete self-absorption. It's chilling.
Unbelievable, right? And the final piece of the puzzle, the ultimate proof tying it all together.
Oh, policies themselves.
Police found all 3 insurance policies, the ones totaling 12.3 million yuan, hidden under his mattress back in Shanghai.
Under the mattress. Classic. So that was it. A complete closed loop of evidence, as investigators often say.
Exactly. No room left for denial, nowhere to run.
Despite his meticulous planning, he left too many threads dangling.
So, justice was eventually served. Lin Gang was arrested. He kept denying it, of course.
Predictable.
But the evidence was just overwhelming. In July 2022, the Dalian Intermediate Court found him guilty, sentenced him to death for intentional homicide and insurance fraud.
A fitting verdict given the calculation and brutality.
He did appeal, but the leaning high court rejected it in December 2023. The death sentence was upheld.
It really is a testament to the police work, isn't it? Connecting all those dots, the behavior, the finances, the autopsy, the lies, the policies. They built an undeniable case.
Absolutely meticulous work. So wrapping up this really disturbing deep dive, what are the takeaways? We've seen a man pushed to horrific extremes by debt, crafting this elaborate, cold-blooded plan.
A plan that seemed foolproof to him, probably, but was full of holes under scrutiny.
Right. And we saw the power of methodical investigation.
Yeah.
But thinking about Li Gang's history, the deceit, the desperation, that stark contrast between him and Li Yuan, it really forces you to think about the depths people can sink to.
And the terrible cost when money becomes more valuable than a human life.
Exactly. Consider all the layers of deception, not just against Li Yuan, but his own family, business contacts, that young student.
He manipulated everyone around him.
So maybe the final thought for you, listening. What does this case tell us about recognizing those subtle signs of manipulation? And maybe about the vulnerabilities of people who are inherently trusting, like Li Yuan was described.
It's a difficult question. How do you protect trust without becoming cynical? Something definitely worth pondering.
If you found this exploration compelling, even though it was tough, please do subscribe to our channel, China True Story. We cover a whole range of topics, true crime like this, social issues, urban legends, cultural insights.
Yeah, we've got more deep dives lined up, and we're already working on the next one, so definitely stay tuned.
And hey, if you have your own true stories, or perhaps strange things you've come across here in China that you think would make for a good deep dive, please reach out. We'd genuinely love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Your stories could be our next exploration.
All right, that's all from us for this session. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.